Greetings, friends, fellow patriots, fellow citizens, and even non-citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention Weekly News and Opinion Podcast. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you, and we hope that you share your affections for your loved ones and your family and your children and grandchildren and enjoy this American holiday that's kind of a fun thing. And maybe go out and support those local restaurants we're trying to keep in business and just have a great day. We're having a heat wave in Northeast Ohio, and boy, we're excited. And we hope that you're having a heat wave where you are, and that the damage that was caused by these ice storms and snow and power outages and things, that finally the weather will cooperate and help speed up those efforts to repair whatever's going on in your world. But I thank you for taking your time to come and watch this podcast where we will talk about what's happening, what happened this week that affects you and our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And we thank all of you who are joining us from, sometimes many of you are new to the show, but many of you have been with us from the beginning for 16 years now, going on 17. Man, time flies, right? So welcome to all of you. We're sure glad you could join us. A lot's going on. As always, we'll try to make sense of it. And, and we just want to thank our generous donors. This podcast, our website, our text messages, our emails, our donations to other groups and individuals who are fighting, for our, freedom and liberty and prosperity, be that PragerU or True the Vote or Turning Point or, Scott Pressler or, just all these different people like Michael Schnellenberger who writes a Substack piece. Your donations are helping to fund the movement that is, the We the People Convention, and that has had tremendous success. And if you're new to the We the People Convention, just go to our website at wethepeopleconvention.org. And on the front page, there's a couple of buttons, and one of them says, Learn about the WTPC. And I think you'll be impressed by what we've achieved so far, and it'll give you confidence as to what we can achieve going forward. And we've been doing pretty well this week, and I'll talk about that as we get going. So let me start by talking about something that concerned all of us, and that was Tom Homan's announcement this week that basically we're going to be drawing down significantly in Minneapolis. And this article that's at wethepeopleconvention.org, Homan claims victory as U.S. surrenders to the left in Minneapolis, is probably one of the more negative articles that I've posted on our website in a long time. And, we really try to keep perspective. We really try, and you'll see in this podcast, there'll be some things that'll really make you mad. There'll be some things that'll really make you happy, okay? And we try to keep some balance. That doesn't mean we're going to lie to you or blow smoke, okay? We're not doing that. We're about the truth. All of us have to be about the truth. I will never knowingly lie to you, and if you think I am, you write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and call me out. And if I'm wrong, I'll apologize the next podcast. But the bottom line is it's about truth and us understanding the threats to our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. This withdrawal from Minneapolis was concerning to me, and I think to many of you, so we're going to dig into that a little bit. The end is near for the Trump administration's Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis. After more than 4,000 arrests, many of the thousands of ICE and Border Patrol personnel sent to the Twin Cities from the other areas of the country will soon return to their home offices, White House Border Patrol or Border Czar Tom Homan said on Thursday. Homan came to the decision that with the support of President Donald Trump after seeing success with the operation, which has led to significant drop in criminal illegal immigrant roaming the streets, unprecedented levels of coordination from local officials, and a decrease in anti-Trump, anti-ICE agitator activity, he said. It also resulted in federal authorities tracking down, and this is not insignificant, 3,364 missing migrant kids who previously crossed the border alone. That's a lot of kids, okay, along with 4,000 arrests of illegal immigrants, and many of whom are criminals. I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this huge operation surge conclude, Homan said during the press conference, but it does not mean the Trump administration is backing down from its goal of carrying out a historic mass deportation campaign, he said. It does not mean ICE is leaving for good. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue through next week. We have a lot of work to do across the country to remove public safety risks who shouldn't even be in the country and deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation. Law enforcement officers drawn down from this operation will either return to duty stations elsewhere or be assigned, or be here still in Minneapolis. So there's still going to be, remember he said there's normally 150 ICE agents in Minneapolis and we had 4,000. He's saying those 150 ain't going anywhere and there's going to be more than that, okay? So, all right. For those who say we're backing down from immigration enforcement or mass deportations, you're simply wrong. Look at the data, all right? So the timing of this, I think, is something you and I need to consider, all right? Because the House the Senate was voting on the funding bill to fund DHS the next day. And I think this was an attempt by Trump to placate the Democrats and get them to pass that. And of course, it didn't, and they didn't, okay? And so we got things like, this story here, "We can outlast an occupation," phrase celebrates as Minneapolis surge ends, okay? We had other stuff in here that said, Mandami to meet with Minneapolis mayor. Mandami, the New York commie mayor, is going to meet with Friday in New York to discuss how Democrat-led cities can push back against deportations. They're celebrating this as a victory. And it's hard to watch. And man, Steve Bannon on his podcast, The War Room, does these cold opens that I just can't even stand watching because it's all the MSLSD and CNN and, the lefties making outrageous claims, which what makes me mad is that Bannon does not then immediately come back and refute them. Now, they're saying what they're saying. That doesn't make it true. And as you'll see later in the podcast, they have less and less people who are watching them. But the bottom line is, I think we could have done a better job in Minneapolis. Now, and my point here is I talk to you all the time, and your and my job and the president's job and all his team's job is to control the narrative, to make sure that the American people are getting the truth about what we're doing. The left's job is to muddy the waters and, use language like, they're arresting our neighbors. They're going into, you could be next. If you're a U.S. citizen, they could stop you in the street and say, show me your papers, right? That's all propaganda. Those are law. That's not happening. Never was happening, okay? That the ICE protesters weren't, breaking the law. That's just not true. But you and I have an obligation to refute that. And it's a weekly, daily effort by you and I to share stories that we post, share the text that we send out. And if you're not getting our emails during the week and our text messages, go to wethepeopleconvention.org and sign up and start getting them. Because you have a job to do to protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And that's by stopping the left from taking your freedom and liberty. Okay? It's participatory. You're not a spectator. So we're trying to help you. Now, so I'm going to talk a little more in depth about what's going on with this because, there's still like 6,000 illegals in Minneapolis or in Minnesota that we have to round up. But they got 4,000. That's not nothing. And, they're not stopping anywhere else. So that's good stuff. All right. But there's more to it. So remember, they went and they said, hey, we're going to not pass this bill. But right at the same time, while this is going on, a judge in California, of all places, mandates, blocks California's law saying that federal agents must remove their masks. Right? So this is the typical thing. Here's 10, these are our 10 demands that Democrats were making that, ICE must, that President Trump and the Republicans must pass to basically make ICE totally ineffective. They basically want us to stop deporting They're illegals who are voting illegally in our elections to elect who? Democrats. And they're stealing billions of dollars of our money, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a second, to fund Democrat campaigns. That's what they're fighting. They're not fighting for, fairness or, the thugs and the Nazis and the ICE agents and stuff like that. And this court in California, a federal district court judge partially blocked a California law barring law enforcement officers for wearing masks in a February 9th ruling, finding that the law discriminates against federal officers. Yeah, there's only one reason. Listen, ICE officers never wore masks until Los Angeles. When this started last year, in Los Angeles, the left launched an orchestrated effort to use facial recognition software, ordering their people to intentionally take pictures of every ICE officer's face so they could do what? Attack their families. Attack their families. And then they want to say, no officer should wear a mask. Really? You need to call them out on that. You need to say, hey, you don't like the mask on ICE agents? Here's why they're doing it. Do you know? And this is why they're trying to stop, why they're trying to stop them from wearing masks so they can destroy the morale and the actual individuals and their families. Don't believe me? We always bring receipts. So you'll be able to share this at WeThePeopleConvention.org on our podcast page when this show is over, okay? This is Tom Homan being interviewed. Sad state of our country when Tom Homan can't even live with his own family because Democrats have decided that harassment and murder is on the table. I'm so over it. I want to see our DOJ hold politicians accountable for inciting violence. And here's a clip from, I'm not playing you the video, I'm just going to show you, so for those of you who are listening, I'll read it to you. Tom Homan said on Fox News, I have not lived with my wife since last March because of death threats against me. Now there are reporters out there trying to find the location of my family, trying to identify who my sons are. This has gone beyond the pale. Do you think it's gone beyond the pale? Do you think any reporter has a right to try to find out where Tom Homan lives and publicize that? Or do you think that person is a activist, a Marxist, communist who's trying to overthrow our nation by what? By stopping us from enforcing our immigration laws, right? I'm tired of this crap. I hope you're tired of this. I hope you will call the DOJ and the FBI. And by the way, the DOJ and the FBI have offices in your community, right? There's DOJ and FBI offices all over this country. Call the local offices and say, when are you going to stop the intimidation of everyone from Supreme Court justices, right? Remember when Chuck Schumer said, you're going to face the wrath, Kavanaugh, right? And then what did happen? A guy from California shows up and was going to kill them? Yeah. When are you going to stop this? I'm tired of it. Will you make that phone call this week? Be a nice conversation to have. We're fed up. We are supposed to be a nation of law. We sure as hell are not when stuff like this is going on, okay? And then the lies. You got to fight back. You and I have to control the narrative by what? By sharing information we have that counters their narrative. Here's an example from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, about a fake story about ICE. Here you go.
Seen this CBS report floating around. There's a lot of liberal talking heads and pundits and Democrat elected politicians who think that this single story and these statistics and the way they are painted is somehow a shot at this administration. It is not, and let me correct the record. Number one, the Trump administration has been clear from day one that any illegal alien present in this country is subject to deportation. However, the priority, of course, is going after the convicted criminals, the worst of the worst, killers, the murderers, the pedophiles, the rapists in this country. Interestingly, in the CBS story, what the Democrat talking heads on television are not saying is this line. Nearly 60% of ICE arrestees over the past year had criminal charges or convictions. And among that population, the majority of the criminal charges or convictions are for nonviolent crimes. Oh, well, what are nonviolent crimes, you ask? This has coincided with what DHS has been saying all along, that approximately 70% of illegal aliens arrested under President Trump have pending criminal charges and or prior convictions. And these so-called nonviolent crimes, drug trafficking, distribution of child porn, burglary, fraud, DUI, embezzlement, solicitation of a minor, and human smuggling, just to name a few. So just because a crime is not violent in nature doesn't mean that crime is victimless. And I can guarantee every single person who is out there on television right now pointing to these statistics that were taken out of context by CBS News would not want an illegal alien convicted of the distribution of child porn or fraud or DUI living in your community. So the Trump administration will continue our focus on deporting all illegal aliens present in our country with a focus on the worst of the worst crimes.
And so there are stories out there. There are stories out there every day that I read that only 18% of the people Trump has arrested are criminals, are violent criminals, right? Again, they're using language to intimidate you. That's what they're doing. They're using language to mislead you, not intimidate, mislead you, to make you think something that's not true. She just spelled it out. Will you share that clip? It'll be at wethepeopleconvention.org. You just go to the podcast page, go down there, it'll see Karen Levitt video, and you can click on it. It'll bring it up on X. You copy the URL. You can text it to people. You can post it on other social media. You can share it. This is how you got to control the narrative, because they're lying. They're lying. And that's what is the threat to our nation. That's how they do it. We've got to stop it. Okay? So then, they what do they do? What did they do? They shut down the government. Here we go again. Senate Dems to torpedo HHS funding bill, hightail it out of D.C. as shutdown looms. Why? Because they don't care about this bill. They're looking for political points. They're trying to say, the Republicans shut this down because they wouldn't agree to our insanely stupid 10 demands. We're not going to agree to it. But now we've just entered a world where I hope Republicans learn from this if they can. Because anyway, guess what? This is the third shutdown in a row. People, federal employees, who the Democrats used to, those are our people. They're all union members and stuff. We're going to take care of them. They don't seem to give too much of a damn about them now, do they? Because the TSA and FEMA and Coast Guard and all those people also are not funded along with ICE. And oh yeah, by the way, as we talked last week, ICE ain't going anywhere because they got $75 billion in the big, beautiful bill last summer, and they got all the money they need to keep on keeping on, and they're going to double down and triple down. So what is this about? It's about politics. It's about survival. That's what it's about. We went over it last week. Everybody understands, that this is a non-starter. The Democrats don't care. And I mean that. They literally don't care. They're off to Munich to be with the globalists who want to destroy America. And we'll talk about some of those efforts in the second half of the podcast. But that's what's going on. They shut down the government because they hate us. They hate America. Here's some more receipts. ICE calls on Newsom not to release 33,179 criminal illegal immigrants into communities. Many were arrested for crimes such as homicides, assaults, sexual predatory offenses, and dangerous drug offenses. Okay? They literally care so much about you and America and even their quote-unquote voters, even though their voters are fictitious, illegal, and dead people, not the people who actually vote. They care so little about you that they're going to unleash 33,000 criminals that, now get this, that they've already arrested for crimes and convicted back into your community so that Donald Trump can't deport them. There's only one reason why you would do that. You want to create chaos, mayhem. You know, Tim Walz put out this piece of garbage speech about, I'll help pack Homan's bags. We want them out of here. The harm they have done, you know, that they have, damages they have done to our citizens, to our people, to our businesses. And I wrote back and said, no, pal, you got it all wrong. The damage you have done, because you never talk about the murders and rapes and robberies and drug overdoses of the people in Minneapolis and in Minnesota that these illegals have committed on your people. You don't ever talk about the billions in theft that these illegals that you are protecting have stolen from the people of Minnesota and from the United States. We're going to talk a little bit more next about that, because this is the problem. They use language, you know, and now they're going to sue. They want us to pay for the damages to their businesses that their anti-ICE protests cost. Not a dime, not a dime. So this week, just as an example of this, there was a hearing with Ellison, Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minneapolis. This guy, man, he is your poster child for a complete Marxist nut job. And guess what? He's Attorney General of Minnesota. How did that happen? How many illegal votes did he get? How much illegal cash did he get? The answer is lots. Josh Hawley calls for indictment of Minnesota AG Keith Ellison over alleged ties to Somali fraudsters. Okay? And this is, just the truth. It was a brutal hearing. Senator Josh Hawley is calling on the indictment of Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison over accusations that accepted campaign contributions from Somali fraudsters for helping them evade investigation by state and federal officials. Keith Ellison is on a video talking to them about how he's going to help them, okay? During a Senate Homeland Security hearing on Thursday, Hawley grilled Ellison about a report from the New York Post published last year that accused the top Minnesota official of taking campaign contributions from Somalis. According to the report, Ellison accepted several $2,500 campaign donations from Somali fraudsters, people who are actually now accused of stealing $9 billion after they raised concerns that federal investigators were unjustly looking at their financials. So the Somali fraudsters gave Keith Ellison $2,500 checks, I think it amounted to $10,000, to shield them from the feds investigating their fraud. And he did it, okay? And he asked them, are you familiar with the $9 billion in historic fraud? And Ellison said, I'm familiar with it because the people who ran the Feeding Our Future program came into your office in the state capitol on December 11th, 2021, and asked for your help in getting investigators off their back. Ellison denied helping the fraudsters, to which Hawley said Ellison had accepted $10,000 from them 9 days after that meeting. Oh, I can help you. Can you grease the skids a little bit? Oh, here the checks show up. He said to Ellison, did you bother to investigate where that money that you facilitated their fraud for, where it went? Do you know where it went, what it was used for, the fraudulent money? Hawley continued, I do. Hawley said, I do, to Ellison, because I just heard testimony about it yesterday. Hundreds of millions of dollars to terrorist groups, to transnational criminal organizations, to drug trade, to drug trafficking, to child trafficking, and you took $10,000 to help them do it. You should be indicted. Yeah. Why isn't he? Why isn't Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis? Why isn't Walz, the governor? Why isn't the lieutenant governor who was on the Signal chat helping to dox ICE and help the protesters stop the ICE people? How come there's been no charges? You and I keep asking that question, and I'm telling you, we've lost patience because there's the evidence. Arrest him. Arrest him right there. He was in the Capitol, Pam Bondi. He's FBI, Cash Patel. When he walks out of the building, arrest him. Are we a nation of laws or aren't we? Looks to me like we're not. And nothing should concern you more. Because if you're not a nation of laws, you're a nation of men and women who rule over you. The whole foundation of our nation, what makes our nation different and better than any other form of government in the history of man, is that we are supposedly ruled by laws that we agree on and that we live under, we voluntarily follow, and therefore we aren't ruled by any person. We are all treated equally under the law, except we're not. And that's what we're trying to reestablish. That's what you and I are fighting for. That is how we ultimately protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and yes, prosperity. Because without law, there is no prosperity. There's only theft by the government. Okay? So moving on to other stories, because this is not ending. The Trump people are pushing on all fronts, and this is a little, I put it on our website. I sent it out to you because it's important, because it's an accumulative effort. This was a story that you should know. Court approves deportations of nationals from Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua. What does that mean? Trump administration can end protected status for nationals of 3 countries, the appeals court ruled. It was a unanimous decision by a 3-judge panel ruling that temporary lift of previous federal judges' rulings that blocked the termination of status for immigrations of these 3 countries and accused the federal government of possibly being racially motivated in its action were not true. There are nearly 89,000 immigrants from Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua who have been granted temporary status to live in the United States. Temporary status was never designed to be permanent, yet previous administrations, get this, have used it as a de facto amnesty program for decades, said Homeland Security Director Kristi Noem on a February 9th X post. That's the whole point. This is the same thing with the Haitians, which are about another 90,000 in Ohio and around the country, and that's currently in an appeals court. Trump has every right to end it. It's temporary. But again, what she said is the key thing. They say, we're going to create this new thing, a temporary status, because Haiti's going through hurricanes and all kinds of civil unrest, so we'll let 90,000 of them come into the United States temporarily, except they never leave. It's a lie. Trump is exposing the lie and acting on the lie. Get them all out of our nation. They're not Americans. They don't want to be Americans, and they're stealing us blind. Remember, we talked about this, I think, two shows ago. We're not against immigration. We are all immigrants. We are for immigration with assimilation. You don't come here and wave the Mexican flag or the Palestinian flag. You wave the American flag. And if you don't, get the hell out. And just go watch the video in our video section at WeThePeopleConvention.org. Gad Saad, his name is G-A-D-S-A-A-D, Gad Saad. I think it's a Muslim name or something. He has a 2.5-minute video that says, how do you save Western civilization? You stop the in-migration from people who are not culturally like you and are never going to assimilate. And you're going to hear about a great speech that Marco Rubio made in the middle of the night last night. This is February 14th. Last night on Friday, he was in Munich. He made a hell of a speech, and I'm going to refer to that here in a little bit. Okay, so now moving on to some other things that are not related to immigration. Well, yeah, I guess it is. It still is. This is great news. The House passes the SAVE Act. House passes an election bill requiring proof of citizenship and voter ID. This was something that, we've been pushing for. You've been making phone calls. And I said at the beginning of this podcast, we take action to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And we have certainly been taking action on this. The SAVE Act passed the House on February 11th, led by Representative Chip Roy from Texas. The legislation will require Americans to prove their citizenship when registering to vote. You don't even get on the voter roll if you're not a citizen. Under the bill, Americans will also have to furnish photo IDs when casting ballots, including mail-in ballots. Oh, photo IDs is voter suppression. That ain't flying. We showed you the video last week. Democrats are for it. 77% of Democrats, 85% of Republicans, independents, all racial, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, whites. We all want it. Yeah, the Democrats voted against it. In advance, it's advanced to set up a potential conflict in the Senate, where Majority Leader John Thune has proposed changing the filibuster or using the standing filibuster to overcome its 60-vote threshold, a major barrier to passage in the narrowly divided upper chamber. The Save America Act passed the House 218 to 213 in a near party line vote, as lone Democrat Henry Collier from Texas voted for it, and Thomas Massie, of course, voted against it on procedural matters. Shut up, Thomas Massie. We're really sick of your idiotic, technocracy, okay? This is the most important thing we can possibly do to save our nation from what? Election rigging. We are where we are because in your and my lifetime, our entire lifetimes, the Democrats have gotten a disproportionate number of votes by cheating in the Electoral College, cheating by the census, by having people counted in districts that shouldn't be counted, by cheating with mail-in ballots, by ballot harvesting, with voter machines, by cheating. We cannot be a country if your and my vote doesn't matter. That's not a representative Republican. It sure as hell ain't a democracy, Democrats, who use that language all the time to mislead you. And Thomas Massie votes against it. Come on, Thomas, get with the program, okay? And so we had a big win with the Senate because Susan Collins last night became the 50th Senate vote to join the SAVE Act. Now, just in, we have 50 Senate votes for the Save America Act. Vice President J.D. Vance can swoop in and break the tie, enshrining voter ID and citizenship into laws. All we need to do now is have Senator John Thune force Dems to a standing filibuster and outlast them for hours. Then make them debate against the 85-15 issue of voter ID on the Senate floor. Make the mainstream media cover it. Flood the airwaves. Democrats oppose voter ID. The political pain will grow so much, Democrats will lose, and we can pass with 50 votes plus JD. Thank you, Susan Collins, for joining and being the 50th. That was a big get. How'd that happen? It happened because you kept making calls. That's why it happened. You kept making calls. How many emails did I send out? How many text messages? How many things did I put on our website saying, call every day this week. Call every day this week. We put up the list. I sent out a text message that included the list of the holdout senators. You called them. They caved. Now you're going to be calling Thune. You're going to be calling Thune till he's blue in the face. And we're going to be demanding that they force the Democrats to do a real filibuster, which is all according to the rules, show their hand, embarrass them, and save our country. Are you going to do that? Are you going to be calling John Thune? Are you going to be calling your senators and demanding that they tell John Thune that he needs to do this? I'm going to. We're going to do it. That's the single most important thing you can do going forward. We must pass the SAVE Act to end the cheating, to have fair elections, to get our agency back. We will have a completely different form of government in this country if we, the people, actually can elect people who represent us. Again, the proof is in the numbers. The Democrats, 214 of them, or 13, and then Massie, voted against something that of overall majority of their people want. Why would they do that? For one person, one purpose, to help themselves, to protect their cheating, not for their constituents. It's embarrassing. And there's some great videos on X and Facebook and places of black people just calling them out saying, what do you mean I can't get a voter ID? What do you mean it's racist? You're the racist. You know why? Because blacks aren't your constituency anymore. Illegals are your constituency. They're hearing it, but guess what? They're not going to give in. Why? It's suicide. I told you, I've been saying for weeks, this is the year we win the war. We're not interested in holding the House barely or keeping the Senate by 1 or 2 seats. We are interested in destroying the entire Marxist, communist, Democrat, fake party and making them go the way of the Whigs. They are Marxists. They are anti-American. Their goal is to destroy us, and there's the proof. There's the proof. Let's defund ICE. Let's stop the SAVE Act. And you only have one choice, kids. Republicans, John Thune, you have one choice. Force. You make them live with what you want. You make them live what we the people want. Get it? Now's the time. There will not be another time. Because I guarantee you, if we don't pass the SAVE Act, they're going to cheat like never before. You're going to make calls? You're going to call John Thune every day? You're going to call your Senate member every day and say, what are you doing about Thune? Drive them nuts. Demand it. It's your right to demand it. All right, on to some better things that are not going to get me all worked up. Well, they do get me worked up. It makes me excited because, again, they're just lying to us. Jobs numbers for January nearly double Wall Street's expectations. Double. Oh, why is that? Because the economists are lefties. They went to Harvard and Yale and Wharton School and all this crap. They're sandbagging Trump. They've been wrong about everything, and here they were again. Don't believe the doomsayers. Rob's report beats expectations. The U.S. economy in January was far more robust than originally expected, don't you know? With unemployment falling and the number of jobs added beating Wall Street expectations. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the U.S. added 130,000 jobs over a month, far exceeding the consensus of 70. When are they going to stop printing the lies? If you are 50% wrong, you might as well flip a coin, right? You got a 50-50 chance. These aren't experts. They're activists. They are trying to hurt you. They're trying to keep you from being prosperous. They're trying to sandbag our economy. It's not an accident. When are we going to go after them, President Trump? This marks a significant improvement compared to December's 48,000 jobs and November's 41,000, which were revised down by 17,000. January's job growth was also higher than the 111,000 jobs added last year. Oh, you mean things are getting better? Making it the strongest start to a year since 2023 when payrolls increased by 440,000. The unemployment rate also dropped from 4.4% in December to 4.3%. That's just the facts. The Trump administration has faced concerns over a potential economic slowdown, but these numbers suggest that the storm may have already been weathered. Oh, you think? You think? Oh, yeah. It's not an accident, folks. They're lying to you on purpose. So are you going to share this story at We the People Convention with people in your group who don't know the truth? Will you control the narrative? You need to control the narrative. And here's the better part when you dig into the jobs number. Here's the part that you didn't hear a whole lot about, but now you're going to. Federal jobs are the lowest since 1966. If you look at the chart, if you can watch it on video, on YouTube or Rumble, on our podcast page, or on any other source, you can see that when Biden was president, we Americans lost jobs. That's the green line going down. And the blue line was government jobs. Under Trump, look how high that green line is. That's private sector jobs. And the blue line is down. Listen to this. Federal employment dropped to 2,686,000 in January 26, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. That number has not appeared in the federal labor data since Lyndon Johnson was the president. The Bureau's All Employees Federal Series confirms it. They have not seen staffing levels this low since 1966. There's the graph. You can see it on your screen. See, it dropped off. Now, again, we're like, that's great, but there's still too many employees. This is about a 10% cut. It's about 300,000 out of 3 million jobs. But it's pretty interesting to me that in 1966 you had this many people. But then again, you didn't have computers in 1966. People were doing everything by paper. You needed more, you needed secretaries and people to file files and filing cabinets, stuff like that. And now we have technology. We still need to cut a lot more. But the point I'm trying to make and the point you need to make is President Trump is fighting for your prosperity. He's not fighting to take your tax dollars to tax you to fund leftist bureaucrats who want to rule over you. That's what that means. That's what you need to talk about, because it's not insignificant. You see how much they tried to stop him, okay? And then, so we got jobs up, we've got unemployment down, we've got government jobs down, we've got private sector jobs up, and then you get this, Trump economy, inflation reports, beats expectations, falls to just 2.4%. Beats expectations. I'm so tired of this. The Fed, what does the Fed have? Like, I don't know, thousands of economists. They should have like a coin flipper. Get out. Quit paying them. Quit paying all these supposed analysts. And on Wall Street, what are you doing? Fire these people. They're grossly incompetent at best, and they're partisan, anti-American, anti-capitalist at worst. They want America to fail, and Trump is not failing, and they can't handle it, right? So here's the deal. The consumer price index increased. The consumer price index increased by just 2.4% in January compared to the previous year, according to data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Friday. This marks the slowest annual inflation rate since May of 2025 and is a decrease from December's 2.7% pace. Economists polled by FactSet had forecasted a 2.5% rise in January CPI, and it was 2.4. Yeah, listen to those clowns. Yeah, listen to those people. That'll get you nowhere. Okay, other big things this week that are important. Trump, man, he did it. After 30 years and $10 trillion for nothing, Trump ends global climate scam. What is this about? This is about a big deal. And the left is screaming, because Donald Trump just called it out for what it is. EPA rescinds Obama-era finding that served as a basis for all climate regulation, okay? President Donald Trump and Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin on February 12th announced the elimination of a 2009 finding that serves as a basis of U.S. action to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, meaning regulate everything. Your refrigerator, right? Your gas stove, your car, your airplane use, everything. Effective immediately, we're repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond. Trump said these crippling restrictions were a major factor in driving up car prices to unprecedented levels, and the car that you were getting was not nearly as good, because they made your car have to shut off at the intersection and then restart again, and shut off and restart again, and shut. Remember that? Yeah, that's gone now. The EPA 2029 ruling concluded that the gases and endangerment currently and future public health and contribute to climate change. Subsequent regulations based on the findings, including vehicle emission standards, the Clean Power Plan, and other limits on methane, oil, and gas. This Trump said, this decision had no basis in fact, none whatsoever, and had no basis in law, Trump said, emphasizing the role fossil fuels play in energy production worldwide. Yet this radical rule became the legal foundation for the Green New Scam, which the Obama and Biden administration used to destroy countless jobs, and what the globalists used, and what the Marxists used. This is the climate commies' tool to dismantle capitalism. The Supreme Court didn't even rule that these things were dangerous. They just ruled that the EPA had a right to regulate things that were dangerous, and they just took it and used it to destroy everything. And you guys who are in, I have a friend, Nick, who's a big supporter of ours, who has a construction company or does asphalt and stuff like that. He has been telling me for years that they can't buy trucks, and that their trucks, the big trucks that do paving and stuff, and the dump trucks and the cranes and the plows, keep failing because of the environmental things that destroy their engines. That's going to go away. And the left is saying, Donald Trump is killing people. Donald Trump, people are dying all over the world because of climate change. No, they're not. And here's the graph right there on our story at We the People Convention. You can see the amount of CO2 has gone up in a steady curve for 30 years, despite $10 trillion and damaging our economy and the world's economy and all these fools that are talking about net zero. Donald Trump ended it. How about going to whitehouse.gov/contacts and saying, thank you for repealing this rule. Thank you. And then share the story. And then in this story, there's a great link that I put right here. Okay, it says, read, there is no evidence that more than $10 trillion spent over the last 30 years has affected the climate at all. Zero evidence. Folks, it was a lie that was perpetrated on you by the communist Chinese to destroy capitalism and Western civilization, to weaken us. Because while we were doing stupid shit like, gas standards and these, destroying our fuel supply, not drilling for gas, natural gas, shutting off coal plants, what was China doing? Building coal plants, 2 a week for a decade, 2 a week, building coal plants. Think that was an accident? Do you know that? Do you think the people know that? Share that story with them and let them know that that's what China was doing. A couple more stories here as we try to get to the end of the first half of the show. This is an interesting article that I want to share with you. Analysis. MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, could hold the key to winning the midterms. Now, I told all of you in 2024 that the reason we won was Donald Trump and RFK Jr. coming together and him pledging to support him, which he has done in spades. That brought us a whole voter block that made the difference. And now, because RFK Jr. has kept it up, I think it's going to help us win again in the fall. If we, stop the gerrymandering, clean the voter rolls, pass the SAVE Act, but this will help. How? Listen to this. Republicans can win big in midterm elections if they unwrap the gift of MAHA that President Trump has handed them, according to a new memo from Taiwan, Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. 4 to 6% of former non-Trump voters cite the Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA movement, in explaining their decision to switch their support to him and the Republican Party in 2024, according to Trump's go-to pollster, Tony Fabrizio. So 4 to 6% of former non-Trump voters said, I did it because of MAHA. But Republican Party is just renting those voters, Lyons said, adding that every Republican needs to buy into the MAHA movement in order to keep those votes. The MAHA movement is here to strategically support President Trump, Lyons wrote. We're eager to help cement this new coalition. We're looking for Republicans who share that vision. Is your Republican House member and Senate member talking about MAHA when they go in your community to speak? If not, ask a question at the meeting and get them, force them to say that they support it. In Fabrizio's survey, Democrats hold a 5-point lead in the generic ballot, 46 to 41. So that's where things stand right now. Fabrizio estimates that 14% of voters could be won over by the MAHA policies, and doing so could close the 5-point gap between Democrats and Republicans. The MAHA winnable middle group chose the generic Democrat by a 5-1 margin, he said. But when given a choice, the MAHA possible group is currently 5-1 I'm for the Democrat. But when given a choice between a Republican who focused on things like removing harmful toxins from our foods, limiting pesticides in agriculture, and making sure our kids are not over-medicated, and a generic Democrat, the group chose a Republican by nearly 2-1 margin. So they swept from 5-1 Democrat to 2-1 Republican. To win these votes, Lyons encouraged Republicans to focus on the tenets of the MAHA movement, getting Americans to eat real food instead of processed food, make it more affordable to live a healthier life. That's really important. Removing toxins from food, limiting pesticides in agriculture, and addressing the over-medication of children. I'll post that story, share it with your Republican representatives, even at the state level. Even at the state level, share that story and say, start doing that. There's voters you can win. Start talking to Democrats about MAHA. It makes a big difference. Here's a story that makes a big difference. And it's a really important story to me, and I sent it out, and I need you to share it with your family, with your kids. Tell your children, marijuana use is not safe. It is causing serious mental illness. We at the We the People Convention, you can search on marijuana. Go to our WeThePeopleConvention.org, click the eyeglass, type in marijuana. You'll get stories, okay, where we are showing that we should have never legalized it. Yeah, we were wrong to legalize marijuana. 7 years ago, this is from Alex Barrett's son, who was a guy that during COVID was just a writer. He wasn't a doctor, who was so courageous and started a Substack just analyzing what the people in COVID were lying about and saying, no, this is not true. We have followed him since then. We support his Substack, and I posted this story because it's really good. 7 years after I wrote Tell Your Children, the world and legacy media are waking up to the psychiatric risks of cannabis. Once again, reality smashes a fantasy of lefty journalist groupthink. Suddenly, warnings about cannabis are everywhere. Last week, researchers reported severe mental illness has spiked in young people in Canada alongside access to high-potency cannabis. The next day came the release of A Killing in Cannabis, a book about a 2019 murder in California and the violence that plagues the marijuana business, and that legalization has not resolved it. Then, 3 days ago, this week, the New York Times dropped its support for full cannabis legalization, writing that the United States has a marijuana problem. The paper admitted cannabis addiction and psychosis had become a crisis. He called for a ban on THC extracts and would recriminalize much of the industry. THC is the chemical in the plant that gets users high, and vapes offerings near pure hits of THC are not popular among users and a big driver of industry profits. Burns has said, I don't want to say I told you so, but I did. Okay? And so in this story on our website, you will see all kinds of other links to prove that. Let me put it this way, as clear as I can. I was a teenager in the 60s, okay? And many of you maybe smoked marijuana. Many of you knew about it. It was a cool thing to do in the rock and roll was going on and all that stuff. That marijuana had 4% THC. The marijuana today has 95%. And this lie about, we should legalize medical marijuana because it'll really help people with medical problems. Yeah, there's a tiny bit of evidence about that. There's a huge stack of evidence, which you'll see in that article, about the psychosis, the mental illness that it's causing. It is a crisis. Your kids have been taught and told, it's safer than other drugs and alcohol. Alcohol is way worse. Yeah, not so much. Your job is to control the narrative, explain the truth, and tell it. I'm giving you the tools. Take advantage. Save someone in your circle. Save someone, because this is not at all what they claim it was. Not at all. And we've got to do something about it. And man, once again, we got trouble because of the lies that have been told. Okay. Then I talked to you last week, I'll just touch on this briefly, that TrumpRx. Go to TrumpRx.gov, look at the savings on drugs that Trump is negotiating, right? And it's really going to help people who aren't insured, who need a drug. They could pay for it themselves at a 50 to 80% discount. So what do we get this week? Oh, yeah. More than 50 conservative leaders signed letter against Trump drug pricing policy codification. What? A coalition of more than 50 leaders of conservative and free market organizations signed a letter to members of Congress on Thursday opposing them making law of the TrumpRx. In other words, he's doing it through executive order. He wants Congress to pass a law. Oh, we're going to stop that. Most favored nation drug pricing policies. The letter, which argues a most favored nation pricing law would import socialist price controls and values in our country, highlights the growing tension between Trump and a portion of the conservative movement. No, it doesn't. It shows the difference between the people who are getting money from the drug companies who don't want this, right? Signatures of the letter include Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform; Stephen Moore, co-founder of Unleash Prosperity Now and former economic advisor to Trump; Tim Chapman, president of Advancing American Freedom; Phil Kerpen, president of American Commitment. On and on. I know Grover Norquist. I know Steve Moore. You know, we're trying to work with Steve Moore on something right now. But this is bullcrap. The letter to lawmakers argues that a belief that the most favored nation drug pricing would incentivize manufacturers to negotiate better deals is based on the flawed assumption that American manufacturers are not already fighting as hard as they can against foreign price controls. They're not fighting against foreign price controls. If that were true, we would have been paying what France is paying or Italy is paying and anybody else. And instead, you and I, President Trump has demonstrated, we're paying 10 times as much. Oh, but these conservatives don't want Trump to use the market forces, the purchasing power of the United States to negotiate a better deal. Not buying it. You read the article. Go to WeThePeopleConvention. You read the article. You tell me if you agree with them or with me. Okay? I'm all for TrumpRx. I'm all for it. I don't think it's socialist at all. I think it is capitalist to negotiate the best deal. And they got a choice. Don't bring your damn drugs here if you don't want to give us the best deal. Yeah, well, we'll see. Two more stories, and we'll wrap up this first half of the show. FBI has substantial irregularities in Georgia 2020 vote counts, probing if they were intentional. So basically, you know, that they raided the Fulton County building where the ballots for 2020 have been stored. Thank you to the efforts of the voter GA group of grassroots volunteers who fought since 2020 in the courts to make sure they couldn't destroy them, though there are some things that may have been destroyed. The good news is that now that they've got him, they're finding some irregularities. Some of the allegations have been disproven, while some of those allegations have been substantiated, including through admission by Fulton County officials, said FBI Special Agent Hugh Raymond Evans, who first filed the affidavit last month to get those things. This warrant application is part of the FBI criminal investigation into whether any improprieties were intentional acts that violated criminal laws. Well, we'll see. Just real quick, there's 5 areas of concern. Fulton County has admitted that it does not have scanned images of all 528,777 ballots. Okay, where are they? Fulton County has confirmed that during the recount of votes, some ballots were scanned multiple times. Ballot images made available in response to public records requests show ballots with unique markings duplicated within the ballot images. Those are duplicate counts. During the risk-limited audit, auditors counting the votes by hand reported vote tallies for batches inconsistent with actual votes within the batch. Next, auditors assisting in the risk-limited audit reported counting purported absentee ballots that had never been creased or folded and were required for the ballot to be mailed to the voter. And then on the day of the deadline to report the recount results, Fulton County reported a recount totaling 511,343 ballots, 17,434 fewer ballots than the original count. The following day, Fulton County then reported a total of 527,000. Why was that mistake made? So we're going to see. And next stop is Arizona. All right. And I'm going to close this half of the program with this little nugget from John Solomon talking to Steve Bannon about what the feds knew going into the January 6th riot. You'll find this very interesting. It's also on our X account, Tom Z, WTBC at x.com.
Get this correct. A year before January 6th, the FBI knew there might be some consternation about the election, given the Democrats already wargaming it. They thought this thing through, and they actually had plans specifically for January 6th, sir?
Yeah, they did. They had a tabletop exercise that they ran in Boston in August of 2020, 5 months before January 6th occurred. The memos, which Kash Patel just turned over to Congress, he just found them recently, turned them over to Congress at the request of Chairman Barry Loudermilk, who's in charge of the J6 investigation now in the House, show that the FBI knew there was a strong possibility of a hanging election or a contested election, that both sides appeared to be agitated and could likely carry out that agitation to the point of violence. And they even devised very specific strategies. And one of them is to embed informants inside the groups where the most likely political violence or political agitation might occur. That is something that the FBI did. We had 24 informants on the ground on the morning of January 6th. The second thing they recommended was mass prosecutions, even for the most minor of crimes. Exactly what the FBI did after January 6th. Now, there are two big things about that strategy. It's pretty clear the strategy was hatched months before, and that's what they carried out. It's not the strategy they used for the political violence that BLM and the far left conducted all throughout the summer and fall of 2020. So a very clear double standard. The second thing is they did embed informants in a lot of groups, including left and right groups, Antifa and right-wing groups, and they got lots of intelligence suggesting a bad episode would occur. We now know from Chairman Barry Loudermilk that while those warnings were very strong from the informants, the preparations and the warnings from the FBI to their brethren in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. did not exist. They didn't pass on the warnings from the informants.
So not only did they know that was going to happen, they war-gamed it. But while they were wargaming it, he said, in August or whatever, BLM was burning down cities, right? Where was the effort in that? Oh, but we're looking forward to the election. There might be violence if it's a hung election. What the hell do you call the violence that they had that summer? Oh, man. This is just, oh, yeah. And Kash Patel just found it. Well, must have been nobody was really looking for this stuff for 5 years when Obama was president. Yeah, they didn't want to find it. I want to see that intel. I want all of that released. I want to know what they knew about Antifa. I want to know what they knew about BLM. Can we get that information? I'd sure love to see it. The fight continues, folks. That shows you we're not a nation of laws and we're not a nation of equal justice under the law. But that's what we're fighting for, and we're making big gains, but it's a long way to go. All right, we're going to take a short break here from our podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the first half of the show. I asked you to do certain things. Are you going to call Thune? Are you going to call your senators about the SAVE Act? Are you going to share the information about MAHA with your federal and state officials? I asked you to spread the word about the marijuana, okay? We are not just talk, we're action. That's what you need to do. So we're going to take a short break for these messages, and I'll be back. You've been listening to the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. We'll see you after the break. The We the People Convention news and opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. Something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. So if you click there,
This is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share, this, whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People Convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot.
All right. We're glad to have you back. Thanks for sticking with us for the second half of the podcast. I know some of you people, do watch it in segments because it's 2 hours long. I get that. I know that many of you use our chapters player, which is on our podcast page. Takes till Sunday usually to get the AI to break it all into sections. But you can basically go through the whole list of our stories and just say, well, I know about that. I don't know that one. Click, and you'll go right to the beginning of that video. And you can get a link that you can send to people of that where it will start right at that video. Okay? So that's pretty cool. I do want to share with you a couple things that are kind of inside baseball, but I'd like some feedback on it. If you are listening to this podcast, would you please write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and tell me how you're listening and how often you listen, because something weird is going on. We were getting like between 1,200 and 1,700 downloads of our audio podcast every week for all last year. And we had it all in January. And then the first week of February, the report comes back and said we had 244 downloads. And last week it was like 241. Why? How could that happen? I wrote to the company that we do that through. It's called Buzzsprout. And they take our audio, and mostly people listen on our podcast page. That was interesting to find out. And you listen, just by going to wethepeopleconvention.org, and then you go to the podcast page. And at the bottom of our list of articles is a player. You can listen to that while you're running, you're working in the garden, doing dishes, cleaning the house, whatever. But it also puts it on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and places like that. So we're all over the place. Why'd that number drop off? I called them. They said, everything looks great. Nothing's changed. Well, something changed. What is that? And in conjunction to that, those of you who've listened forever, the We the People Convention, from the beginning of the Tea Party, we have been under attack. We have been attacked by Google, who is the behemoth in everything from search to email, where they have been blocking our emails for decades. I have trouble sending an email from our organization to Nan, to my wife. Can't get through. Okay? We paid people in the past to look at it, and we found that Google was not only blocking our servers, because the left had a strategy, a tactic. They would report conservative sites as spam, And then they would get the servers we use our emails to send, our emails, they would put the IP address and they would block it on a blacklist that it's a spam site, which is a total lie, but they did it anyway. We couldn't send our emails. So it's always an adventure sending emails because they're intentionally blocked. It's not my imagination. I'm not, just dreaming this up. We've proven it. All right. So Constant Contact is one of the groups we use. We use multiple vendors because you have to protect yourself, right? It's just one of the entrepreneur's creed. Always have multiple sources for what you're doing, all right? So we use Constant Contact, which is kind of our legacy program for where we started. When I started, 16, 17 years ago, the Portage County Tea Party, then we had the Ohio Citizens PAC, then we had the Ohio Liberty Coalition, which I was president of. Then we had the We the People Convention. Those were all Ohio entities. And our Constant Contact was our way of sending out emails. Shazam! Out of nowhere, they start the new year, and we've had fantastic open rates on our emails. An average email gets like 3 or 4% open rates. People that have good email lists, they get like 10 or 20%. For our history, our open rates are like 50%. Why? You want the information. It should be a direct thing, right? You sign up, say, Tom, I want your emails. I send you an email, you get it. That ain't the way it works. But at least when we could get through to you, you open them. So we generally get, on Saturday when I send out the big email saying, hey, the podcast is up, we get like a 50% click rate. Oh, yeah. Well, Constant Contact said, we're changing the way we measure the opens. And we're only going to list the ones that we know are not opened by some mechanized process, some bot or something. Our opens dropped to 22%. 22%. Now, as I said, we have multiple vendors. In our other vendor, which sends to the same list and then some more, our open rate last week was almost 50%, which is true. I don't know. This is what we fight with when we're trying to organize you and us to protect and defend our country. We don't have tools. We want to live, they say, oh, Elon Musk saved free speech. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. We don't have free speech on X. I've got like 2,600 or maybe 2,800 followers on X. I had like 2,600 the first week I signed up for X. No matter what we do, we don't get any more followers. Why is that, Elon? Well, it has to do with your logarithm. Because you don't want people following us and going to our webpage. You want them to stay on X and keep feeding your AI with their information so you can train Grok. Okay? Folks, so what we like to think that, we've got, Rumble and we've got YouTube's letting us back on, and we're on YouTube. We get like a couple thousand viewers on YouTube each week, and we're doing YouTube shorts, and we're on these and that stuff. It's nothing like it should be. That's why it's so important for you to share this, to send it to other people, to say, did you watch the podcast? To share the stories that we send you. Okay? So I just wanted to give you that inside look into our world, because it's not fun. It's really hard. It adds an incredible amount of work to my workload trying to figure out how the heck to get a message to you, and maybe that'll make you value the message you do get a little more and do something with them. Because I want to tell you, man, it's an effort. It's an effort to get you anything that we want to put out. Best way to fight that is go to the WeThePeopleConvention.org website on your own. No one can stop that. And check out what's there. Okay? That's a great way to do it. Okay. Let's move on to the second half of the podcast. We usually start out with international things, and there are big international things. This is all connected. Okay? So let's go. Let's talk about Iran. Trump meets with Netanyahu, says he wants an Iran deal, but reminds Tehran of Midnight Hammer operations. So what's going on? Trump is sending another carrier group to, outside Iran, and we've got forces there that are like Desert Storm level. And yet, Trump is saying very clearly, I want a peace deal. I don't want to have to do this. And Netanyahu is basically playing a secondary role and saying, well, we'll support you, but we want the elimination of our nuclear program. We want the elimination of our missiles. We want the elimination of them funding who? Terrorist groups. Well, that's not an unrealistic ask, is it? Except Tehran ain't going to give that up. And what they're doing is they're stalling, because that's what they always do. And so President Trump is no fool. He's making a diplomatic effort, but if they just play him, he's going to bomb them. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned. It's very dicey what's going on right now. It's very dicey. Okay. So then, at 3 o'clock this morning, I got up at 5 o'clock to start doing the podcast. At 3 o'clock this morning, Marco Rubio was in Munich, where all the Dems in the Senate had to leave, and they're off all next week because it's President's Day, and we can't pass the SAVE Act. We can't fund the country. No, we're going to go to Munich and be with our globalist buddies. Well, Marco Rubio went to Munich as well. And I posted his speech. It's 22 minutes at wethepeopleconvention.org in the video section. So click on videos. And I'm just going to read you a quick excerpt because that was on Conservative Treehouse, and I'll link to this article as well, because this is a hell of a speech in defense of Western civilization and making very clear to the world, and particularly our quote-unquote friends and allies, what's about to happen. And what's about to happen is a complete change from what's been going on since World War II. This is a quote. The euphoria that followed the collapse of the Berlin Wall led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered a, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. He says, this was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history, and it has cost us dearly. If that quote doesn't get your attention and make you want to watch it, I don't know what will, but wait till you hear the rest of it. I don't know what happened to Marco Rubio. I have no idea. I had no expectations that he would become the leader that he is. It's amazing. I beg you to go watch this speech at wethepeopleconvention.org in the video section. Wow. Then Trump struck a trade deal with Taiwan, and it reshapes supply chains and global power. So remember, the whole thing is China is the enemy. They were, making inroads all over Europe. They controlled the WHO. They controlled the World Economic Forum. They were behind the green scam. They were behind all the climate stuff destroying Western civilization. They were behind DEI, trans, critical race theory, all of that. Trump is now in full-blown war with them, and they're crushing him because China's in trouble. Their military, we reported the last 3 weeks, he got rid of his top military people because they found out in Venezuela they ain't no match for the U.S. military. Not at all. Okay? Now they're pretty afraid. So what does Trump do next? He signs a deal with Taiwan. On February 12th, the Trump administration finalized a sweeping trade agreement with Taiwan that cut tariffs, boosts American exports, and pours hundreds of billions into U.S. industry. Taiwan agreed to eliminate or sharply reduce tariffs on nearly all American goods, as duties on U.S. beef, dairy, and corn were reduced immediately to zero. Pork belly tariffs fell from 40% to 10%, and ham fell from 32% to 10%. Taiwan also removed non-tariff barriers on motor vehicles, medical devices, and pharmaceuticals, accepting U.S. safety standards in these sectors. The U.S. dropped tariffs on Taiwan imports to 15% from 20%, a shift that aligns Taiwan with key competitors like South Korea and Japan. Semiconductors and advanced electronics stand at the center of that adjustment. Taiwan is committed to buying, now get this, nearly $85 billion in U.S. goods between 2026 and 2029, including $44.4 billion in liquefied natural gas and crude oil, $15.2 billion in civil aircraft and engines, and $25.2 billion in power grid equipment and generators. Rounding out the list are marine and steelmaking equipment. Reaching even higher in the headline figure, Taiwan companies pledged $250 billion in U.S. production of semiconductors, energy, AI, and advanced electronics. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation committed to $100 billion within that total, with the Chinese government guaranteeing another $250 billion to support the supply chain expansion. Those are huge numbers, guys. Those, again, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity? When American farmers and ranchers and dairy people can now go to Taiwan and compete with no tariffs, it's going to increase their revenues, which will increase employment, which will increase production. The semiconductors moving here is a national security thing. All this stuff helps do what? Create jobs and build the U.S. economy and make America great again. It's not talk, it's action. There it is. Share that story because people don't get it. And then Cuba. Cuba's peso hits record low as life grinds to a halt. What's going on here is Cuba, the commies, since Castro, were dependent on Russia and then China. And they were funneling the money and the oil through Venezuela. And now Venezuela ain't sending them any oil. And oh, by the way, Russia and China aren't coming to their aid. And so what happened this week? The country is believed to be just a few weeks away from running out of oil. It has already announced that it has run out of jet fuel and won't be able to refuel planes that land in the country's airport. This has led to long-distance carriers to cancel flights from Canada, from Europe, whatever, because if they can't refuel there, they can't come there. Okay? Cuba's going down. Cuba's going to end their communist rule. We are going to change the government of Cuba. The people in Cuba, and boy, I wonder how many Cubans in Florida who left Cuba because of the oppression of the Castro regime, who are now successful businessmen and people in Florida. Wonder how many of them would go back to Cuba to help make Cuba what it was before Castro, because people don't know. Go back, if you want to do something fun this weekend, go research Cuba before Castro. It was a happening place because it's a beautiful island and there were skyscrapers and casinos and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, maybe Trump's going to make Cuba great again. Wouldn't that be a good thing? Yeah, man, working on all fronts. This was just a real good thing that I just had to share with you. Meloni is the president of, or the prime minister of Italy, and she's a Trump favorite. Meloni is no chicken of the sea. Italian Navy to stop migrant boats. She is not fooling around. She is listening to what Trump said at Davos, saying, listen, you got to cut this illegal immigration. You got to deport the people who came in that will not assimilate to save your country. She's doing it. She's listening to Trump, even though the EU is threatening to sanction her. Wow. Meloni goes hardcore in Italy by using their Navy to block migrant boats from landing. Proposed legislation was agreed by ministers yesterday. She isn't bound to the pressure of the UN or the the European Union. She's protecting Italy and delivering her election promise. This is very puzzling, said the guy who posted this. I've watched at least 4 videos now that Dominic Cummings, who states quite clearly that we cannot use the Navy to stop the boats without falling foul of the ECHR rules, the EU rules, and she just said, to hell with you. I'm not following your stupid rules. We're not letting you destroy Italy. Here, man. That's great. But again, you can see in Rubio's speech to Europe, again, we want friends who are strong. If you want to be an ally of the United States, you got to carry your weight. And Trump said that at Davos, and you'll hear Rubio say that again in the speech this morning at the Munich defense thing, okay? But here's what's going on. Here's their reaction. This is how Europe plans to strangle American free speech, because they cannot survive if the people of Europe have the facts, the truth about the Green New Scam, about the lies about the climate and all that stuff. If they have the facts about immigration, they're going to throw all of them out. Well, they can't have that. Well, where are they getting that information? Oh, from X, from Google, from Facebook, from other things, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. What European does, what does European censorship look like, and why should Americans care? I answered that question before the U.S. House Judiciary Committee this week. The last time I testified before the committee in September, I highlighted the censorship potential of the European Union's Digital Services Act, which at the time still seemed theoretical. My message then was that the EU laws controlling online speech was poised to censor lawful expression beyond Europe, including in the United States. Many were not convinced. But now we have moved from theory to practice. There can be no doubt now that the DSA is the tip of a massive censorship industrial complex with global implications. And basically, the EU has a multi-pronged strategy to open a slew of investigations against U.S. Social media companies to add more and more regulations to impose crippling fines and ultimately to either break up or ban companies such as X, which are pro-free speech. Free speech is a threat to European elites that they intend to either cripple X with fines and investigation or force them to bend the knee at the altar of censorship. I hope X stands strong because we need free speech. Now, you can read the rest of that article because it gets very detailed. And what they're doing, this is about you and me. This is about our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity directly, okay? Because they understand that if they can deny Europe and other countries to X and to Facebook and all those people, they could hurt them. Musk can't stand up to that. President Trump is going to have to sanction countries, and we're already doing it in Britain, and sanction individuals who are pushing this. This is a war tactic. This is an attempt to destroy Western civilization. Europe has been taken over by the Marxists. Now, not the people, they're elites, right? Which is what was happening here. And again, they all took bribes. They're all on the dole, all right? But understand, it affects you. And when you talk to your legislatures, you need to show them that story and make sure they understand. This isn't about censorship in Europe. It's about censoring your voice here in the United States. So please share that story. It's a very good story. Okay? This is an important story because it's about vaccinations, and the left's big criticism about RFK Jr. is he's a vaccine denier. He's a vaccine denier. They're just saying, prove your vaccine works. Okay? So what's going on is there are measles outbreaks happening in the United States in South Carolina and California. Dr. Oz advised people to get measles vaccines as cases rise in several states. He's saying, get the vaccine. The CDC so far has reported 733 measles cases in the United States. The administrators for the Center for Medical and Medicaid Services has advised people to get a vaccine for measles in response to a rise in cases nationwide, mainly in South Carolina, but now also in California. Take the vaccine, please, Mehmet Oz said, the CMS administrator, in a CNN interview on Sunday. We have a solution for this problem. He said, not all illnesses are equally dangerous, and not all people are equally susceptible to these illnesses. But measles is one you should get. You should get the vaccine. Okay? So he's not saying don't get it. Now, what's interesting is they're claiming in these articles that these people are getting vaccines because their parents have decided not to give them any vaccines to their children. Okay? And that is true in some cases. But they don't talk about 20 million illegal immigrants who came in who weren't vaccinated. How much of this is from them? Sure like to know that answer. If any of you have any information on that, please share it with me. I just didn't have time to research it for today's show. This was a interesting curiosity. What the heck happened this week? El Paso airport grounding was in response to testing of U.S. military technology, sources say. So in the middle of this poor woman being kidnapped in Arizona, the El Paso airport gets shut down, and people are trying to figure out what does that have to do with this kidnapping. And here it didn't have anything to do with either, but it had to do with something pretty bizarre. The testing, which was taking place near Fort Bliss, was of high-energy lasers that are designed to protect against drones from drug cartels that could cross over the U.S. borders, 3 sources say. The grounding of aircraft at El Paso International Airport in Texas early Wednesday was in response to this testing. The testing was taking place in the proximity of the airport, raising concerns with the Federal Aviation Administration that a commercial plane could be hit. But it ended up just being a total miscommunication between the military and the FAA, and now Congress is investigating. I'm happy that we're looking at shooting down drones. Apparently no drones were shot down, and that something was going on. But for those of you who picked up on that story, it kind of flashed on your screen and it disappeared. And I said, well, I got to find out what was there. Apparently not much. So then there was this other story, and I won't mention it, I'll mention it because of the trans issue. New Canadian mass shooter identified as transgender. Authorities rush not to misgender. So once again, we have, and there are things on X that are showing that of all the mass murders happening globally, and particularly in the United States, a far disproportionate number of them are being done by trans people. And there is clearly a link, in my mind, we'll see what the evidence shows, that the hormones, the medications, the treatment that they give these trans people is causing this, is causing anger, violence, depression, all that stuff. But the story here was, it was literally comical. They look like idiots, okay? Was the Canadian mass shooter. They first said it was a female until it came out. Very quickly, though, things started to trend in the other direction. The first clue involved local authorities oddly describing the shooter as a gun person, not a gunman, instead of a gunman. That's not a descriptor I've heard before in that context, and it appeared to be an attempt to avoid misgendering the shooter. Shortly after that, more information started to trickle in, with multiple right-wing sources in Canada, including Rebel News, reporting the shooter was a trans-identified male named Jesse Strang, S-T-R-A-N-G, killed his mother, his stepbrother, and a bunch of children at a school he attended, and a teacher. Killed 10 people, including himself. One of the 11th person is in critical condition. This has got to stop. This was intentional. This is being done to these kids. And I mean, there's videos on X of this kid who'd been arrested before. You talk about dangerous. The police had been to his house, but they didn't arrest him, because he was trans. Yeah, he killed 10 people. And so we always bring the receipts. This study comes out. New study challenges the mental health claims of gender-affirming care. Oh, I thought gender-affirming care helped people, right? A new study challenges the popular claim that medical intervention improved trans-identity people's mental health. Rather, the study argues non-medical factors such as social support and coping style are far more important determinants to these individuals' mental health outcomes. For years, doctors and medical associations have argued that patients with gender-related distress, including children, suffer from depression, suicidality, and need access to gender-affirming care to relieve it. If I cut off your breast, that'll make you feel better about yourself. Not. They presented this view as a scientific consensus, and that view has shaped policy debates about how readily these interventions should be offered under what, if any, safeguards. And wow, what a surprise that this new study done by Hong Kong researchers and published in Frontiers in Psychology says, bullcrap, it's all a lie. And the people who spread it, they are the ones who need to suffer consequences. Just like we did the story last week about the trans psychologist and doctor who did the surgery and pushed the mother and child into surgery, who lost $2 million lawsuit. This is going to explode, but it's got to, I said last week, sue the hospitals, sue the doctors, sue the nurses, sue the psychiatrists, sue everyone involved, including the people who published these bogus papers. And then go look at what happened. Just like COVID, they intimidated people. They intimidated doctors. Go along with this and we'll get you money. Fight us, we'll destroy your career. We'll get you your medical license revoked. Remember COVID? Same tactics. Those are crimes. They should be prosecuted. At the state level, nobody's prosecuting. It's just so frustrating to me, and I'm sure it is to many of you. This one, no surprise here, but I thought I'd point it out because it's fun to point out how sick the teachers' unions are. This is in San Francisco. Teachers email parents demanding that they don't homeschool their kids as San Francisco strike grinds into its third day. So what is this fun little deal about, okay? Striking San Francisco teachers have demanded that parents avoid homeschooling their children to help support their push for higher wages and better conditions. More than 50,000 children were kept home on Monday and Tuesday after teachers walked off the job and joined picket lines, demanding a 9% raise over 2 years and subsidizing family health care, which the cash-strapped San Francisco School District claims it can't afford. And with the strike set to drag into Wednesday, local parents are now fuming after teachers emailed them and asked them not to encourage any home study. The district, which says it could lose millions in funding each day the strike goes on, offered homework packets that include 5 days of independent study work and practices in both English language arts and in math. Sounds like a reasonable thing to me. Your kids can't go to school, but they can keep learning. Wow, that would have been helpful during COVID, wouldn't it? Anyway, but the teachers claim in messages they sent to parents, oh yeah, by the way, how did they get legal access to be able to email the parents? Because those databases are not for the use by the union. How'd that happen? Anyway, that the packets were a ploy to ensure the district continues to receive funds during the strike, meaning the district would be able to avoid caving to the union's demands. It said if many families participate in independent study, it reduces pressure on the district and can prolong the strike. Read a screenshot shared on social media. If you are able, we ask that you do not participate in the independent study of your students, of your child. Don't teach your child to help us extort more money from you. Can't make this up. If you are able, we ask that you do not participate. Tech worker Nadim Hassan, who has a child in an elementary school, described the email as messed up. Strike if you must, but it's diabolical to say, don't do independent study when we shut down the school for a few days, he wrote on X. And that's who they are. They don't care about your kid. They don't care about you. They think you're so stupid that you will help them in extorting you for raises that they probably don't deserve in San Francisco, right? Yeah, share that story with your teacher friends, okay? Or with anybody you have kids in school. That would be fun. This was also fun. Consequences. CNN lost 2/3 of its viewers in the past decade. So I told you, fortunately, they all of them, MSLSD, which is MS Now, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, they're just crashing and burning. The Washington Post is nearly out of business. The New York Times is going down. You know why? Because they're liars and people want truth. They're coming to podcasts like this to get some facts and truth and some intelligent conversation, and they're not listening to the liars. And here's your proof. Warner's Discovery Board keeps fighting to keep its cable channels. One has to wonder why, especially in the case of its news channel. Let's see. CNN, the CNN is part of Warner Brother, and they're trying to get a bought by Netflix or Paramount. But during the discussions, they're looking at the facts. CNN's viewership decreased from roughly 1.3 million in 2016 to 553,000 now, is fueling rumors of possible network sales, something CNN's up for grabs parent company has vehemently denied. Results recorded this month by Nielsen are actually an improvement from January, when they only had 488,000 people viewing per day. As an example, Fox News averages 1.7 million total daily viewers to lead all basic cable, while ESPN averages only 775,000. Now that's for their news and stuff, not for their NFL and all that stuff. MS Now, formerly MSNBC, has 552,000 total day viewers, and CNN is at 436,000. So Fox News, with all its problems, has more than all of them combined. And then you throw in, Real America's Voice. You throw in, Newsmax, One America News. All those things. And we are getting our message out better. But you know what's really going on? People aren't watching news at all. They're not, because it's inefficient. How many commercials can you get in a Fox News thing? They'll go to break and have 12 commercials in a row. You can watch this podcast and get more information in 12 minutes than you're going to get on Fox in the last 3 hours. People are looking for efficiency. That's why terrestrial radio is dying. I mean, someone sent a memo to Salem Radio, and iHeart, can you just quit killing yourself? Because I want to listen to the radio, and all I get is commercials when I come in, when I go out, in between. There's 20 minutes of news in an hour. There's 20 minutes of talk even in an hour of talk radio now. 20 minutes. Who has time for that? I don't. I'm sure you don't. Anyway, thought I'd share those numbers. This is a story that's important to me and should be to you, and I'll just recap it quickly. Nuclear chiefs lodged Trump reform, but says his agency will maintain its independence. This is about the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, all right? And I've said to you, this is an agency that has destroyed America. You and I talked to you a few weeks ago when we're talking about nuclear reactors coming online. Trump is pushing this. The IT guys, the AI guys are building data centers. They're trying to build their own nuclear reactors. And the guy who's now in charge of it, his name is Regulatory Commission Chair Ho-Ni, H-O-N-E-I-H. He's an American, but his name is Ho-Ni. He's been appointed, and people are saying, there's going to be no safety. The Trump people are going to tell you what to do. And he said, no. There's not. The NRC is still an independent agency. But he says what has happened is that they have turbocharged us. We are now getting out of the things we should have never been regulating. We're focused on energy, and getting energy. And he said has already moved the commission many steps forward in galvanizing near-term deployment of safer nuclear technologies by authorizing demonstrative projects such as the Energy Reactor Pilot Program that will award funding for 10 first-mover companies in their innovation to achieve criticality, scale potentially for commercial viability. I just want to share with you that they will tell you Trump's a tyrant. He's trying to run everything. All he's trying to do is get people focused on what's best for America and for you, okay? He's not on an ego trip. He can't be on a bigger ego trip. Nobody's got a bigger ego than Donald Trump. But it's not ego that drives him. It's results. We got to get this. I said to you before, if we had not intentionally sabotaged the nuclear industry in the United States, you and I would have electricity so cheap today that they wouldn't even meter it. I just got a letter saying they're going to put a new smart meter on our house, and I know many of you are against that, and I'm looking into it, and you can pay $28 a month to not have it, right, to pay the guy to come read your meter. Anyway, we're going to have nuclear energy again real soon, and electricity will be that cheap. You and I should have a fusion or a thermal fusion machine that's the size of a toaster at our house to run all of our electricity for 100 years. We all should have that. We don't have it because the Nuclear Regulatory Commission screwed us. Now, Trump's got to move in the right direction, and that's good news, and I wanted to share that with you. Okay. This is another good news. A growing Republican push to ban Sharia law. You and I know we have to beat the Marxists. We have to defeat, this year, we have to defeat the Democrat, Communist, Marxist party and send them the way of the Whigs. But then we got to defeat the Islamics. We got to deport them out of our country. We got to keep them from coming in our country. And we've got to destroy Sharia law here and globally. It's worse than communism, okay? You can have Muslim religion. You can pray to Muhammad or whatever you want. But you can't have a religion that's a form of government and it's totalitarian. Can't have it. It's worse than communism. So this was good news. The Sharia Free America Caucus held its first media conference on Tuesday as some Republicans in Congress moved to preemptively ban Islamic law being applied elsewhere in the U.S., even though there have been no known attempts to do so. Congressman Keith Self, who launched the caucus alongside with fellow Texan Chip Roy, described Sharia as one of the greatest threats facing our nation today. He said the caucus is made up of 33 members of Congress from 18 states. If we do not fight back, Sharia will dominate our culture and America will no longer be American, Self said. Under it, there is no true freedom of religion or speech, no equal rights, and women are second-class citizens. He's right. You got to support that. Start talking about that in your city, in your community. We got to have the conversation. We're not against religion. We're against totalitarian governments. That's what Sharia law is. If you don't know about Sharia law, you need to do some research. Take your favorite AI and just say, whether it's Perplexity, whether it's Grok, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever. Just type in, tell me about Sharia law. Good, bad, and ugly. You'll be pretty terrified. It's pretty damn ugly. Okay, couple more stories, and then we'll be wrapping up the podcast. Let me see here. I got to add something, though, here before I do that. 1 second. I don't want to add this. One second. I'm sorry to be taking up your time to do this. Pause. But you're going to like what I'm going to show you, but not just yet. But I'm going to show it. Okay, and here we go. And one more thing. There it is right there. Okay, awesome. I think you're going to like this. I got a surprise for you guys, I hope. See how that turns out. I hope it shows up okay. Okay, anyway. All right, so a couple more stories, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. This is a good story. U.S. to build longest primary aluminum plant with 500,000 ton annual capacity. So again, what is President Trump trying to do? He's trying to restore our manufacturing capability so that we can have independence, so we can make our own stuff like we used to. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have been doing this. We shipped it off overseas, and now we're trying to change it. U.S. is set to build its first aluminum smelter since the 1980s with a potential production capacity of 500,000 tons a year, marking a major shift in its aluminum production policy and reducing reliance on imports. The project is set to be built by Century Aluminum, a U.S.-based aluminum producer in Enola, Oklahoma, according to the press release. Okay? In the past, the U.S. has been a leading producer of aluminum. At its peak, we had 33 smelters in the U.S. producing over 5 million tons of aluminum annually. This one's only going to do 500,000. That's 1/10 of that. But the number has since reduced to just 4 sites that only output 683,000 tons. So this one's going to almost double our capacity. But it's critical to show you and for you to share with your fellow citizens in Oklahoma. They're bringing jobs. There'll be other things that build up around this plant because once they smelt it, they got to truck it out. There'll be companies there that'll use the aluminum to make stuff. This is how it all works. I just want to share with you because we just don't talk about it enough, and you need to. You need to, okay? This thing I want to do as we get to the end, I want to share an update with Victor Davis Hanson because he's doing better. He's not totally well, but he's back doing podcasts. 6 weeks after surgery, Victor Davis Hanson is inspired by fans' messages. And I know that many of you have written to him. You've told me that. We were the first to say he was having surgery. That was the weirdest thing ever. We announced it on this podcast that he had serious surgery on Monday after our podcast and may not survive, and no one was covering it. It was weird. But anyway, here's the story. 6 weeks after surgery to remove lung cancer, Victor Davis Hanson shared in his most recent podcast about his recovery and the hope he has gained from his well-wishers. I never expected so many people to be so nice. I knew they were nice. I didn't know there were so many of them, said Hanson. I'm getting letters, emails every single day from the nicest people. We get all these distractions, Mandami, the Bad Bunny, all the ICE stuff, and you get depressed, Hanson said. Then you get these letters from people from a kind of lost generation we don't even think about. And they write in the most beautiful cursive handwriting. It's amazing. I'll get people that will write a whole page in just beautiful calligraphy, and they all mention God. They talk about prayer. They talk about their loves. They talk about all the tragedies they've suffered. I read every single one of them. We get letters like that from you guys, and they're wonderful. I can't tell you how many times Nan and I having tough days, really tough things happening, in the political world, in our world, to people we care about, to our country. And then we'll get the mail, and there'll be this handwritten card, or we'll get an email or a text message just saying, we're praying for you. Thanks for what you're doing. It matters. It mattered a lot to Victor Davis Hanson. He said, the surgeon got the lymph nodes, and once he wrote, I thought everything was going great. But then I'm 72, so one of my arteries and two of my veins, I don't know what happened. I guess they're old, but they started bleeding pretty heavily. He said they didn't hesitate. They put me right back out and reopened the lung and started all over again, and he found them. He said, I lost, 2 or 3 liters and 5 transfusions. They nearly killed him. Though he's taking a positive outlook, he noted frustration and wishes he felt better than he did. So I'm just feeling like I'm too wobbly. I can't drive yet. I'd like to get back full-time to work, he said. And he mentioned the cancer was uncommon. He said one of the doctors told him, this is a sideshow, the surgery. The real problem is making sure that the cancer does not come back. So many of you know that. Many of you have suffered cancer, and you know it's a long-term fight. The good news is there's more tools to fight it today than there ever has been, okay? So that's the good news. But thank you for praying for Victor Davis Hanson. We need him. We need his intelligence. We need his voice. Mostly, we need his historical perspective, because we don't know anything about history. And he's the one guy that kept retelling it and helping us understand. So that was really, really good stuff. Let me see if this is going to show up. Hold on one second. No, it didn't show up. Okay. I'm trying to load this image. I'm going to hold it up to the screen so you guys can see it. Happy birthday, America, 250th. How are you going to celebrate all that we, the people, have achieved? Okay? So this is the new design for a banner that I'm having made to put at our house to be up all year, because we live in a park area and there's people walking by and walking their dogs and biking and everything all day long. And they'll take note of that. And I think I'm going to put these up for sale. I think I'm going to make these available to you. If you would be interested in getting one of these banners, okay, and sending it, and putting up in your area to kind of get people thinking about how are you going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. It's our birthday, not Donald Trump's, not just the government's. It's us. We built this country. And as you can see on this banner, and for those of you who are listening, I'll describe it, but I tried to put things like, here's Ben Franklin and the quill pen that wrote the Declaration of Independence. Here's a steam engine, the light bulb, the telephone. Here's a Model T car, the Statue of Liberty, the Wright Flyer, the Apollo lunar lander, the iPhone, the computer. These are the things that we, the American people, brought to the world and to ourselves that made this the greatest country ever to exist on this planet. We need to celebrate that. And as I told you, when we first talked about President Trump's plan, okay, and if you go to, and I do want to tell you this, on the front page of the WeThePeopleConvention.org, I told you there's these buttons, and one of them says, learn about the We the People Convention. But there's a new button that says, 250th birthday, let's celebrate. If you click that, it'll show you this banner, okay, and it'll show you the links to all the things that President Trump is doing. And then we'll put links to, like, I got a thing from PragerU that they're setting out like 50 buses with displays to go all over the country to come to your community and celebrate our heritage. I said to you when we announced the whole, 250th anniversary celebration with the Washington Monument lights and stuff like that, that we can create positive self-talk about our country and bring our country together. That's what I think this opportunity is. While we're in the middle of this hot civil war, when we're fighting the Marxists and the Islamists, the 85-15 on voter ID, okay? The 80-15 on ICE, we want people to be deported. That shows we have more in common than we have against each other. How do we bring ourselves together? By talking about things that have happened in your township, in your city, in your county, in your state over the last 250 years that were great things that common people did. You know why it's a great conversation piece? Because nobody knows about these things. Talk to your historical society. How can you pull some things out of their records and start displaying them all over the place? What can you do to have a celebration, to talk to people about things that happen in your community? I've asked you to write to me. Share your ideas. I've had people say we're going to give out constitutional amendments and stuff. Okay, but I need you to share positive self-talk. And how do you do that? You don't tell people things, you ask them questions. Hey, did you know who invented, whatever it is, the street light? No, who did that? Oh, it was this guy from Cleveland, Ohio who did that. And they'll be shocked to find out he was a black man in the 1900s. Yeah, we're not such a racist country after all. But you don't have to tell them that. They'll get it themselves. Start researching your community and start asking people, hey, did you know this? Did you know that so-and-so developed this new farming technology here? Did you know so-and-so was a war hero and that his family still lives here? Start the conversation. It's positive self-talk, and it will get people off the garbage that the news media sends you, because if it bleeds, it leads. It ain't bleeding in your community. It shouldn't even be mentioned. Okay? Is that a concept you can get into? Write to me. Info, wethepeopleconvention.org. Okay? So as we wrap up the podcast, tell people about this podcast. Tell them. Share it. Go to the podcast page and share the link. Use the chapters player to share just a story. Click on the stories on the podcast page and share just that story. Okay? Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. All right? And tell me, I should have covered this. I shouldn't have covered that. You were wrong about this. Here's another idea. This is what I'm doing for the 250th. I called my senator. I talked to him about, the Sharia law. I told our state people, that they should get behind these things. What are you doing? Talk to us. It's your podcast. We just produce it and perform it. It's your podcast. Tell me what should be in it. But I hope all of you who've listening for the first time and watching for the first time got a lot out of it, because there's a lot in it. I know that. And remember, there's a replay button. Okay? I don't know if you know this, but if you kind of click on the screen on our podcast player, you hit a button, it'll go back 15 seconds. Okay? But you can also scroll back or use the chapters player, and you need to go watch some things again. You need to watch the Marco Rubio video I told you about in our video section. Okay? We're giving you tools. Use them. But remember, you can't just be a spectator. It's not about watching this podcast or listening to it. It's about acting on the things in this podcast that are protecting and defending your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. We must pass the SAVE Act. You must be relentless. You must be calling John Thune every day, and you need to be calling his local offices if you're in his state, and you call all your senators in your state, their local offices, and say, what are you doing to get Thune to start the filibuster? Okay? We must have it. It's not optional. Our nation depends on it. It's not called the Save America Act for nothing. Okay? And then we'll list at the bottom of our podcast page, we list all the stories, and then this week's action items. This week's action items. Will you perform each one of those in defense of your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity? I know so many of you do. Because you show me, you tell me, I hear about it. And oh yeah, by the way, Susan Collins became the 50th person senator to say they'll vote for the SAVE Act. That didn't just happen, folks. You made it happen. You made it happen. Thank God for all of you. Thank God every day for all of you. So we're going to wrap up this podcast. We're going to remember our friend Charlie Kirk and what he taught us about our country and our faith and how they're tied together. We will never forget him. We will continue to watch his videos. We will continue to support Turning Point, who's going to play a huge role in this election. Okay? And, you know, we will live the way Charlie Kirk lived. We will fight for our nation. He gave his life. No one's asking you to do that yet, okay? But he gave his life. You just need to give your time, effort, money, and your heart and soul to protect your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. All right, that's enough. We're going to wrap it up for this week. We sure appreciate you being here with us. God willing, we'll be back together next week, okay? You've been listening to the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless our great nation. Have a good week. Enjoy the warm-up. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. Bye now.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight